Everyone, please stand and join me in a moment of silence followed by the serenity prayer. God, grant me the strength to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to serve the difference. Hello, my name is Mark and I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is April 5th of 2003. Welcome to the 7 p.m. Thursday night meeting of the Treasure Map Group of Alcoholics Anonymous. This is a closed meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, but spouses are welcome to attend this meeting with the alcoholic. We'd like to send a special welcome to any visitors who are here from out of town. Please stand and introduce yourself. Do we have any visitors here from out of town? Hey, Don. Welcome. All right. Also, anyone who may be visiting the Treasure Map meeting for the first time, please stand and be recognized. Shirley?
I'm Shirley, and I am a grateful alcoholic.
Hey, Shirley.
I'm Linda.
And Mike?
Stand up.
Hey, Leslie.
Stand up. Oh, you are? Sorry. Anyone else? I don't think so.
Marcia alcoholic.
Hi, Marcia. Welcome, everyone. And finally, if there's anyone here who is at their first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, please stand and be recognized. All right. The Treasure Map Group of Alcoholics Anonymous believes in working the 12 steps as outlined in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous with a sponsor. There are many home group members here tonight that are willing to be sponsors. If you are new or if you do not have a sponsor, you can stop at the back table during the break for a list of names and numbers of home group members who are willing to sponsor others. Tonight is birthday night. The Treasure Map Group celebrates the birthdays of its home group members on the last Thursday of each month. We celebrate every month for the first 12 months of sobriety and each year thereafter. We believe birthday night is a night of gratitude. We will present the chip to the home group member celebrating their birthday and give them a brief moment to express their gratitude. After we have presented all the chips, we will take a break and celebrate with birthday cake before the speaker shares. If you'd like to become a home group member and celebrate your sobriety birthday, please stop by the registration table in the back during the break or after the meeting and get signed up. The Treasure Map Group of Alcoholics Anonymous is committed to bringing a message of hope to those who suffer from alcoholism. We believe this message is contained within the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous and our personal experiences. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and to help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. Our meeting tonight will focus on steps 8 and 9, and we have several announcements. Mike's going to come up and do the announcements.
Thank you, Mark. Good evening, everyone. My name is Michael D., and I'm an alcoholic. It just seems so weird doing that all the time. Hey, Pete, can I ask you to hand these out? We have a few announcements tonight. As you guys know, over the last 3 or 4 months, we've really been working diligently on finding and trying to create ways and modes of opportunity to bring the message to the alcoholic who still suffers. So tonight I'm just going to give a little update on a couple of things that we're doing for home group members. The first one are the business cards that Pete is handing out. And on the face of the business card, it has obviously the name of our group. It has our email address. So if someone needs to reach out to us or get in contact with someone in Alcoholics Anonymous, they can do that. And that might sound a little odd to someone if you're over 40, but if you're under 25, you're probably not calling, right? So, or at least you might not call, right? On there, as well as our website address, okay? And on the back is a place for your name and your phone number, okay? So often we're like, yeah, I should call you sometime. I should get your name and number. I should do this. I should do that. This is at least an opportunity to have something that you can leave with someone. I had the blessing of speaking on a Keystone here the other night. Took a bunch down with me. The guys went crazy for him because somebody comes in and gives a talk, and they're hungry, and then the person leaves, right? So you can put your name on the dry eraser board, and then everybody, 45 guys standing there writing their name down or whatever. But you know, it really was impactful from what they said to be able to leave there with something. Now they know where to go. They have a card. They have an address. They can take it with them. So that's one of the things we're trying. Okay. The second thing is we did a very significant update on the website. Been spending a lot of time on trying to create an environment where people can find information, not necessarily even for the Treasure Map group per se, but just for Alcoholics Anonymous in the region. Anyone who's suffering from alcoholism, we have scheduled of all the meetings up there. It's not just ours. Folks can find District 5. If you're not familiar with how the service organization works in Alcoholics Anonymous, there's a couple of tiers to it. We're District 5. District 5's information is on there, as well as Area 63. That's the state of South Dakota, as well as the General Service Office in New York and things like that. So we're trying to provide an outlet where people can find out information about this program, right? We also have done something that we had a number of requests for. And there's a couple of things that are kind of thrown in here. So the first thing I want to tell you is we really had some odd feedback from a very, very small portion of people that are like, why are you putting this online? Like, no one's going to listen to it, right? Well, I can tell you, we did a calculation here, and we were kind of joking the first night. We're like, there must be 700 people online. Like, we were kidding about it. But the reality is, this last week, we hit the number 700 on people who have gone to that online site of ours and listened to those talks. So amongst the people that have been here, an additional 700 people have heard those talks. So praise God for that, right? So we're going to continue to try to work on that and make it more accessible to people. With that being said, there's a number of people that have reached out to us through our email, asking to be able to contribute. They're not in Sioux Falls. They're from around the country. They don't necessarily want to make it their home group per se, but they want to be involved in some sort of support, like they're getting fed from it, right? So look, when the message of Alcoholics Anonymous is carried and somebody's hungry for it and they get fed, they want to support. That's just what happens. So if you go to our website, you can see on the website, and many of us local members have done this as well, but hey, man. Sorry, saw a buddy of mine in the back, sorry. And so the seventh tradition can be fulfilled online now through a PayPal account, right? So a couple of home group members were like, oh, I forget cash, I forget this, I forget that. I didn't have my wallet tonight, whatever. And so the donations kind of do this, which is fine. It's okay. But at least this way, this could be, it can be set up for a monthly giving, right? So folks who want to do that can do that, whether they're in as a home group member or if they're somewhere around the country. So that's kind of fun too, right? So those folks are getting fed, they want to support, which is great. Again, you can go back to the table with Randy and sign up as a home group member if you'd like, and celebrate birthdays tonight. We have 4 birthdays tonight, Mark? Is that right? 4 birthdays tonight. 700 people. Oh, one other thing too on the talks. One of the things that has now been completed as well is that Scotty, our IT guru. Scotty, would you stand so everybody kind of knows who you are? Yep. Scotty's gone through all the talks and he's edited out all the spacing, like during our breaks, and yeah, right, and gone through that, and that'll be something that we just repeatedly do, right? We'll just keep editing them. But I just wanted to let everybody know that those are up to date. So even though we have an hour-and-a-half meeting, really it's probably an hour, online. So once it's edited. The last thing I wanted to mention is that next week we have a gentleman who's coming down from Fargo, North Dakota to speak. If you haven't heard Calvin D before, you should be here. He's a tremendous man. I've known Calvin for a long, long time. One of the finest guys I know, step working member of Alcoholics Anonymous. He is also, for the guys in the room, sorry ladies, no offense, he's also one of the key contributors to Bad Axe Men's Retreat, which we do up in northern Minnesota as well, so we'll put a little pitch out for that. We'll have sign-up sheets over there. And then lastly, if you are not on our Facebook page and would like to be, okay, you can go to the website, click on the Facebook link. It'll bring you there. Just click on the deal that says, I want to be in, and then we'll put you in. It's a secret group, and the reason we do a secret group is to try to protect our anonymity on that. So if you search for the group, you will not find it. Okay, that's part of it being a secret group. You cannot find it. You can't, if someone goes to your page and you're a member of the secret group and there's postings, and they go to your page just looking at your stuff, stalking you, whatever they might be doing, they will not be able to see anything that's posted via our page. Even though you can, they won't be able to. Okay, so it's as anonymous as it can get on social media for sure. And so we have a survey up there about some things that we're reaching out to the fellowship, the home group members, anyone who's on our Facebook page, about activities, things that you might find interesting or you might find might feed you from a social perspective or from a fellowship perspective. And so if you could go to the Facebook page and just give us your honest feedback, we'd appreciate that. We'd like to respond to our group in a way that our group wants us to, instead of us guessing, hey, this would be great for them, right? Like, nah, I ain't going to that thing, right? We want to hear back, want to hear your feedback. So Randy has stacks and stacks and stacks of these cards, okay? So if you're going to speak somewhere, if you just have friends, if you go to newcomer meetings, whatever it might be, right? Feel free to take a handful, throw them in your wallet or your purse or whatever, and you have something to give your name and number to a newcomer with. In addition, you know, who knows, maybe he hears a talk on online that that he or she can really be helped with. So thank you very much. God bless you, and pass it back to Mark.
All right, and now please welcome Jordan to read how it works.
Jordan, alcoholic. How it works. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. Usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. There are such unfortunates. They are not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. They are naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. Their chances are less than average. There are those, too, who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. Our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we are like now. If you have decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. At some of these we balked. We thought we could find an easier, softer way, but we could not. With all the earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil until we let go absolutely. Remember that we deal with alcohol, cunning, baffling, powerful. Without help, it is too much for us. But there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find him now. Half measures avail us nothing. We stood at the turning point. We asked his protection and care with complete abandon. Here are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery. 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol and that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, to another human being, the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons who we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us, the power to carry that out. 12, having a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to the alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Many of us exclaimed, "What an order, I cannot go through with it." Do not be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. We are not saints. The point is that we are willing to grow along spiritual lines. The principles we have set down are guidelines to progress. We claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. Our description of the alcoholic, the chapter to the agnostic, and our personal adventures before and after make clear 3 pertinent ideas. A, that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. B, that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. And C, that God could and would if He were sought.
Thanks, George.
All right, thank you, Jordan. Now please welcome Shirley to read the 12 traditions as we pass the baskets. Thank you in advance for your generosity and support. Tradition 7 states that every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions.
Hi, Shirley, alcoholic.
Hi, Shirley.
12 traditions. 1, our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends upon AA unity. 2, for our group purpose, there is but one ultimate authority, a loving God as He may express Himself in our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants. They do not govern. 3, the only requirement for AA membership is a desire to stop drinking. 4, each group should be autonomous, except in matters affecting other groups or AA as a whole. 5, each group has but one primary purpose, to carry its message to the alcoholic who still suffers. 6, an AA group ought never endorse, finance, or lend the AA name to any related facility or outside enterprise, lest problems of money, property, and prestige divert us from our primary purpose. 7, every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. 8, Alcoholics Anonymous should remain forever non-professional, but our service centers may employ special workers. 9, AA as such ought never be organized, but we may create service boards or committees directly responsible to those they serve. 10, Alcoholics Anonymous has no opinion on outside issues, hence the AA name ought never be drawn into public controversy. 11, our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and films. 12, anonymity is the spiritual foundation of all our traditions, ever reminding us to place principles before personalities.
Shirley.
All right, thank you, Shirley. We talk a lot about home group membership at the Treasure Map Group because we believe it is vital to our recovery. What does it mean to be a home group member? Here is a brief excerpt from the AA General Service Conference-approved pamphlet on the AA group. Traditionally, most AA members through the years have found it important to belong to one group that they call their home group. This is the group where they accept service responsibilities and try to sustain friendships, and although all AA members are usually welcome at all groups and feel at home at any of these meetings, the concept of the home group has still remained the strongest bond between the AA membership and the fellowship. With membership comes the right to vote on issues that might affect the group and might also affect AA as a whole, a process that forms the very cornerstone of AA's service structure. As with all group conscious matters, each AA member has one vote, and this, ideally, is voiced through the home group. Over the years, the very essence of AA strength has remained with our home group, which for many members becomes our extended family. Once isolated by our drinking, we find in the home group a solid, continuing support system, friends, and very often a sponsor. We also learn firsthand through the group's workings how to place principles before personalities in the interest of carrying the AA message. Talking about her home group, a member says, "Part of my commitment is to show up at my home group meetings, greet newcomers at the door, and be available to them, not only for them, but for me. My fellow group members are the people who know me, listen to me, and steer me straight when I am off in left field. They give me their experience, strength, and AA love, enabling me to pass it on to the alcoholic who still suffers. If you are interested in making the Treasure Map meeting your home group, please see Randy at the back table during the break or after the meeting." And now before we get started, please, as a reminder, either shut off or silence your cell phones. Thank you. And tonight is birthday night, and our first birthday is Kyle with 24 hours.
I'm Kyle. I'm an alcoholic. Before coming to these rooms, my life was unmanageable in a lot of ways. I did have a little over 2 months clean, sober, whatever. And I fell off the path again, and I just went right back into the devastation of alcoholism. And I'm an addict as well, which hand in hand is not a good combination. I'm really glad to call this place my home group. I'm really glad for everyone in the rooms, because I've never had anything like this in my life. You know, actually have someone that looks to you to do something as simple as unstack chairs and stack chairs. I've never had that responsibility or manageability in any sense. I mean, it really makes my heart really happy that I have people that care about me in these rooms, and that I have a lengthy phone list to call. And before I go out there and I use or drink or whatever I do, I'm going to use that phone list. And I just really appreciate everyone in this room so I can have a meeting and have recovery. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle.
All right, and our next birthday is Kyle with 8 years.
I'm Kyle. I'm an alcoholic. 8 years. I didn't think I'd ever get there. I remember coming in here and not thinking I could get to 14 days. This last year, I just been a lot of changes in my life. A lot of things have happened. Probably more changes in 1 year than I've ever had in my entire life put together. And this program's come through every time. I'm just grateful for the fellowship, a group of men to lean on, a set of guidelines to live my life by that helps me to have a life that I never could have had on my own. I'm just grateful for the men that came in here before me, taught me how to work this program, taught me how to read that book like an instruction manual instead of a novel and work those steps. Thankful for sponsorship and sponsees and service work, and for God doing something for me that I never could have done for myself. So I'm just grateful to be here. Happy. Thank you.
I have the pleasure of introducing the next birthday. And it's Mark J. Mark and I met right when he came in, and he was mess would be an understatement, really. But he had a spot in his recovery, he had a spot in his sobriety, where he recognized that the only thing he was doing is staying sober, and it was killing him. It was killing him. And we started to work together shortly after. I've watched him get married, watched him have babies. I've watched him serve this country in the Air Force. I've watched him grow from a little kid into a man who loves God, and a man who tries to reflect God in his home and to his wife and to his children. And that's what this program gives us. Very honored to be called your friend and your sponsor, Mark. Come on up, buddy. God bless you.
Mark, alcoholic. Yeah, I don't know. It's good to be back. Lived away for a while and moved back about 2 years ago. So I'd like to thank God and my sponsor. I would say, with the exception of my father, you've probably had the greatest impact on my life, and my wife and kids. Man, for a non-alcoholic, I don't think I could ask for a more understanding and supportive spouse when it comes to AA and, commitments and stuff like that. And as Mike mentioned, we have 4 little ones, and they're a lot of work. And she ends up alone with them a lot, putting them to bed and stuff like that, which is, like Jim Gaffigan says, bedtime with kids is like negotiating with terrorists. So. And then lastly, you guys, the fellowship in this meeting, because, we don't do this alone. So that's all I got. Thank you. And then our last birthday is Eric, 31 years.
I'm Eric. I'm an alcoholic. The reason for this, there's many reasons. The main reason is tonight, I'm missing probably one of the guys I walked every day in this deal. We met at our first AA meeting together. And pancreatic cancer took him last September, and I remember laying his chip on his, on his casket, and it just kind of struck me. Sorry. Biggest thing, I think that I've learned so much. The greatest gift that I never expected in this walk is the relationships and the depth that we share here, and the breadth that we share here. And when it's gone, it's missed. My friend Ralph has become a much better listener. I still talk to him. Tonight's the NFL draft, and for most of you who could give a crap, but Ralph, as Mike is a Chicago native. During that last year of his fight, we talked every day. And I would say over the past 31 years, there might be a week in there where we didn't touch base. Most of the time, we talked several times a week. He was my mentor. One of the greatest examples I've ever seen of a God-centered man. And the grace that he went through in his illness, I'll still never forget when I went to see him, and we all knew it was the last time, but we didn't talk about it being the last time. Because till the last day, he was going to beat this sucker. And it just amazed me how he was still more concerned about everybody else's needs around that room than his own. And it wasn't conjured up or fake, it was genuine to the last breath. The examples Rock Allen tomorrow, 59 years. And I think of the Jimmy Ryans and, oh my God, the men that picked me up and walked me through this thing called spiritual recovery according to the 12 steps, according to the instructions in this book. My God, the depth and weight and what it's done for me and for my family, I can't put it into words. This year, most years I hear, it's 8 years and God, everything changes out here. Lots of changes, kids popping out at 9 minutes and 5 minutes for some people. The longer I'm sober, the less it changes on the outside. I mean, you get some stability, I hope. But the more that it changes inside in a way that's just indescribably beautiful. I have far less questions today about God and about what this thing about life is truly about. I don't know, it's because I've gotten so many more answers, it's just that I've got less questions. And the things that I've been taught here are as solid as this podium in front of me. Faith, love, service, God, country, family. Ultimately, love moves mountains. And this is like, I've been searching for a home group since the Monday night work and the steps we did for about 20 years. And because of life changes, I had to change my meeting schedule. But I've been really looking hard for a home group. And this is like water to a man that's been out in the desert for a few years, of being in a place to where our focus is the newcomer. And, we're actively reaching out. I thank God for men like broke your anonymity online. Sorry. Maybe in the post edit you can make that go away. I'm so sorry, but just the men and the women that just sacrifice so much in order to make it possible. We stand on the shoulders of giants. Keep coming back. But more importantly, give this thing as much of a go as you do staying sick. See what happens. And sorry I went too long. I just love you all, and there's not a damn thing you can do about it. So thank you.
All right, let's have another round of applause for our birthdays. Back, everyone. All right, now I'm going to introduce Mike as our facilitator on 8 and 9.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate the insincerity. Because in my mind, you're all standing right now. So that's okay. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm here. Hey, good evening, everyone. My name is Michael D., and I'm an alcoholic. And that is one of the most irritating microphones I've ever seen in my entire life. So steps 8 and 9, as we continue our little step study through the big book. I have to tell you, my personal experience with 8 and 9 was life-changing. I'm a firm believer that this is where the magic happens. Up to this point, we have rectified almost nothing. Up to this point, we have made almost no life changes. We are not drinking, and that's a big life change. But in terms of what's really wrong with us, right? And if we recall from the other prior step studies that we've done, we understand what's wrong with us, right? We have a bodily allergy. AA can do nothing about that. If I have that allergy, I'm going to have that allergy until the day I die. We're not doctors. If I have a mind that lies to me, again, sort of the joke is, contrary to popular belief, we're not counselors. And we're not, right? AA can't really do anything about my mind. It's not therapy we're in here for. AA only focuses on the third problem, and that's the broken soul. That's the spiritual malady that we suffer from. It manifests itself in our selfishness, manifests itself in our constant narcissism. And as soon as we get a moment where we stop thinking about ourselves, when we recognize we stop thinking about ourselves, we pat ourselves on the back for not thinking about ourselves, which means we're actually back thinking about ourselves again. It's this odd figure eight we go through all the time. So when we make this decision to turn our will and our life over to the care of God, we have some steps to do to fulfill and to complete that commitment that we've made, right? We make a 4th step. We look at our fears, our resentments, our sex conduct. We write all that down. We say some prayers in 4. We produce a sane and sound ideal for our future sex life, right? We share what we've written down with another person and God in step 5. In that hour after the 5th step, after having that conversation, we look at ourselves and we ask ourselves, were we sincere? Were we honest? Are the stones properly in place if we tried to make mortar without sand, as our book says? If we can answer to our satisfaction, then we start praying for the willingness for those areas of our life that we really don't want changed. What we really want is to continue the behavior and not have the negative results of the behavior, right? But we really don't want the behavior to quit, because the behavior feels really good, right? At least we think it does, whatever that happens to be. Then we humbly ask God to take away our shortcomings, our defects of character, right? And then where do we go? Well, from there, we start moving out into life to try to change our life, coupled with the grace of God. As we've talked about before, right? Our potential is not me. I am not the potential of Mike, and I don't know anybody who's the potential of themselves. It's my potential plus God. It's your potential plus God. And so when we look at this list of people that we've gotten from our 4th step that we call our 8th step, and we're in the midst of praying for the willingness to make these things right, I think it's important that we recognize that what's really going to happen from here forward, if we do this thing, if we're committed to the actions in 8 through 12, that we're going to get a new life. The book uses words like change of heart, transformation, conversion. Those are very different words than sobriety. And that's where we're headed. We're headed to meet and have an experience and an awakening with our Maker that will revolutionize our outlook on life, on Him, on His universe, on His people. And I have to be engaged in that process. I have to be an active participant in that process. Step 8 and 9 is where I go out to become an active participant in that process. Up to this point, I've just looked back. And I've shared something, which is great and wonderful, and I don't belittle any of that at all. This is where it starts to get real. This is where the rubber meets the road. And I can remember making those first amends. I had this long list of people that I resented. And justifiably, of course. I mean, if they had done to you what they had done to me, you would clearly agree. And even though I began to talk the language of AA, right, which is that, I'm selfish. Even though I began to talk the language of AA and things like, all the things that happen in my life are my fault. I'm responsible. I'm 100% responsible for where I'm at in life. Even though I began to utilize that language because all of you were using it, and slowly I began to pick it up and I'd start repeating it. It doesn't mean I actually believed it. It just meant I was repeating it. And 8 and 9 taught me that that is true. Right? No one has had nothing done to them. And who's had that experience? But I used the things that were done to me and I magnified them so large that I lost all perspective on what actually took place in most of those scenarios. The first place I went was my mom. And I sat down with my mom and I apologized to her for being, kind of a rambunctious kid and, I don't know, just really messing up a lot and causing her a lot of stress. And my mom, being a good Irish Catholic mother, said all the right things and made me feel good, and we moved on. And that was it. I didn't feel really any relief. I continued to resent my mom. I continued to feel and harbor a great amount of anger toward her, unjustifiably for sure. But I did. And as I continued to progress through the rest of some of the amends, I found myself sort of longing for something better with her. I didn't really know what that was. I sort of felt like almost obligated to the identity that I had pretended to have throughout my life to keep it, right? Because you start letting go of these things and you just cannot act like the same idiot. You just can't. And I started to let some of these things go through step 8 and 9 by making amends to people. And my mom continued to be an area in my life where I needed to rectify it more than I did. You know, our book tells us that a simple sorry isn't enough. I need to really digest what I'd done to her and then openly have a conversation with her about it and make it as right as I could. That just saying, I'm sorry, Mom, because she was a good mom and would forgive me, that wasn't an amend, right? So I didn't know how to do that, and I sat down with my sponsor, Joe, and I said, I don't know how to make amends to my mom. And he said, well, why don't you try hugging her? And I said, well, my mom and we don't hug. And he said, well, I'm not talking to your mom. I said, I asked you to hug your mom. I didn't ask you guys to hug each other. And that was sort of a weird concept for me. And so I remember I went home for Thanksgiving and I put my arms around her, and it was so long a period of time in which we had embraced that she just frigidly went like this. Hands clenched by her sides and just sort of let me hug her, but was pulled back a little bit. And I was like, wow, that was spiritual. That's great. Thanks, Joe. And he said, when you go home for Christmas, do the same thing. And I did, same response. And I went home for St. Patrick's Day. And I can bring you to the house. I can bring you to where my mom lives. And I can bring you to the hallway, the spot in the hallway where the first time in many years my mom's arms came up behind my lower back and she embraced her son. And that may not seem like a big deal to you, but it's an enormous deal to me. An enormous deal to me. And she whispered in my ear and she said, I haven't had a hug since you were here at Christmas. Imagine that life, right? No hugs for 2.5 months or 3 months. Nobody, right? And I'm judging the living daylights out of this woman, right? We walk into an AA meeting, and if we have friends and have some decent fellowship and we've been around for a few months, it's likely we're going to get hugged several times when we walk into a meeting, right? Except for Robert, but most of us are. I'm only kidding, Robert. I don't know where you're at, but he's over there. There you go. Thanks, man. I'm just kidding. But the reality is we get hugged a lot here. My mom never had that. I began to see my mom in a different way through that process. It was still not right. And I went back to Joe and I said, I don't know what to do. And he said, Mike, you're thinking about this wrong. You think that you had a bad mom, and in reality, she had a bad son. And you have no idea how to be a good son. You have no idea. He said, so what I'm going to have you do is I'm going to have you call your mom every week, and I'm going to have you ask her 2 questions. And the first one is, hey, Mom, how was your week? And the second question is, no matter what she says, wow, that sounds interesting. Could you tell me more about that? You see, I didn't know how to communicate with anybody. I had no idea that your opinions and your thoughts and your ideas and what your day was like and what stress you were under and how many aches and pains you had in your body mattered. I swear to you, I thought my selfishness was aligned in my behavior. It wasn't. It was in the marrow of my bones. I didn't care enough about anyone to even consider that. Didn't care. And he said, now, you have to understand something, Mike. You've only been sober a few months, and you start making these calls to your mom, and she's not on the bandwagon yet, right? Like, if you come to us, we'll tell you you're doing good. Don't go to her and ask her, right? Just do these questions, and that's it. And he goes, but early on, she's not gonna respond very positively. She's gonna respond with all of this stuff that has yet to be healed. So how else is she supposed to respond? And I can remember feeling like she should be more happy about my sobriety. Like, isn't this what she's always wanted? Like, why is she still so antagonistic toward me? Oh, it was a long list of whys. None of them were on her side, right? So I'd call her up, and he was right. First few calls were really odd. Hey, Ma, how was your week? Fine. Wow, that sounds interesting. Could you tell me more about that? It was really fine. You know, but I just kept calling, and I just kept asking, and just kept calling, and just kept asking, and just kept calling, and just kept asking. And suddenly her answers got longer. Well, you know, I worked all week, and Roberta's going to pick me up, and she's going to take me to lunch, and Kitty across the street, we're going to go to Mass on Thursday, and I got to take Cleo, the dog, to the vet because I don't know what's wrong with Cleo, right? Well, tell me more about that. Well, I don't know. He's sniffing around the garbage can. I kick him in the ass. My mom is great, you know. I don't know what the deal is. But what's even weirder about the fact that my mom began to respond to my questions after a period of time was that I actually began to care about her answers. And without knowing it, and without attempting it, and without demanding it, just being involved in the process that Alcoholics Anonymous and the Big Book lays out for us to be involved in, before my own eyes, I became a son. I began to actually care about the answers my mom gave me. And I began to get enthusiastic about calling her regularly. And I began to open the conversations with the last dialogue we left with. Hey, how's the dog doing, Ma? Well, it's okay, you know, Cleo. Yeah, I guess so, you know. On and on and on. And we'd have these dialogues, we'd have these conversations. And it began to grow, and it began to morph, and it began to continue to change and get better and better and better. I was, I don't know, I was probably 17 or 18 years sober, and my sister and I talked on the phone, and my mom had a stomach problem, and she was going into the doctor's office or the hospital just to get looked at for some tests. And I just remember thinking, tests? Like, they don't do tests like that anymore, right? This is Marcus Welby. This isn't, you know, they don't do that. Put you in the hospital for 3 days for some tests. They don't do that. And I remember feeling really awkward about it. My sister had to fly out for work, and my uncle had passed away, and my mom was going to be at the funeral. And I said, tell you what, I'll come in, just be there with you. I'll go to the funeral for the family, and we'll be fine. We'll just see what happens. I just felt like I needed to be there. And I went to St. Francis Hospital in Blue Island, Illinois, and they were doing exploratory surgery on my mom. Now, again, like, I don't even know that they do that, but these are the terms they're throwing at me, right? And so I'm in the waiting room, and this doctor comes out, and he wakes me up because I have a tendency to fall asleep in chairs. It's kind of a gift, really. And so he says, excuse me, Mr. Donnelly? And I said, yeah, I woke up, yeah. And he said, look, I don't know how to put this, so I'm just going to lay it on. He says, your mom has stage 4 cancer. We think it's ovarian. We opened her up, and the cancer's everywhere. And I don't know if your mom's going to die in 2 months or 2 years, but this will kill your mother. Thanks. Have a good day. And I was taken aback. I just couldn't believe it. And it was crazy. And she was still out with the anesthesia, and I made phone calls to my friends in Alcoholics Anonymous. First person I called was my bride, and who's my best friend in the world. And then I started calling some of the people that have graced our podium. Mark, I think I even talked to you, Eric. Called some people, and I just said, hey, this is happening, and I don't know what to do. You know, I remember calling my sponsor, Keith, who also passed away about a few months after my mom went into hospice. And he gave me the best advice ever, and that's just how Keith was, and here's what it was. Just love her. That's what you do. You keep doing the same thing you've always done. You just keep loving her. And that never dawned on me, you know? So, I mean, this time, like I said, I'm 17 or 18 years sober, so I got a lot of the amends crossed off the list. We'll get to some of those, but I wanted to open with my mom tonight because it's one of the most compelling amends I've ever made in my life. It radically changed the way I looked at women when I made amends to my mom. Changed the way, over the course of time of a growing relationship with my mom, it changed my marriage. Without that, I don't know where I'd be today. I really don't. So I'm in Indianapolis for work, and I'm driving around, and this hits me, call your mom. I call her, and I said, Mom, you know, in AA, we have this thing called the 9th step. Remember when we had our talks and stuff? And she said, oh, yeah, I remember that. I said, hey, look, you're getting ready to go to the Lord. Like, we were pretty open about it. It wasn't a big secret. She was very open. And I said, look, if there's anything on earth here, right, you can't leave the bed. I said, but I would really be honored if there was anything that you needed to make right. If you could tell me where to go and tell me who to find, and I'd go make it right for you. My mom said, no, we're good. She called me about a week later, maybe 10 days later. And she said, hey, the next time you're coming in, I got a couple things I'd like you to do for me. And I walked into this hospice room, and my mom gave me a little corner of a magazine that she had torn off with 2 names on it. 2 names. This is a woman I couldn't stand, and she was going to meet her maker, and she had 10 days to think about it, and she came up with 2 names. But I'm not a math whiz, but that's like 1 every 5 days. Like, that's nothing. My 8th step was like a roll of Bounty paper towel unleashed, you know. My sweet mother had 2 names on it. So I came in and she gave me this, and I had the privilege for the next few hours to drive around the city of Chicago, representing my mother, finding these 2 people. It was 2 groups, really, and saying, Anne-Marie Donnelly wants to make this right. I'm her son. And I couldn't keep, I was crying like you wouldn't believe. I cry all the time, you know that by now. But, I was welled up beyond recognition. And I remember driving around feeling so proud. Like I was finally in. I was in before that. But it was just a tremendous feeling of liberation and of peace. And I think peace is this. I think peace is being in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing, and you're aware of it. And as I drove around the city of Chicago, I got to make amends for my mom. And I thought I couldn't get happier until I walked into that hospice room. And I gave my mom that little magazine piece back. And she looked at me and she said, oh, thank you, son. No, thank you. Thank you. My mom passed a few months later. My bride was there, and my sister and her husband and a couple of really close friends of the family. My mom was a very devout to Our Lady of Mount Carmel, and she died right smack dab in the middle of a rosary. We were saying the rosary around her bed. It's, early in the morning, 12:30, 1 o'clock, and we were saying the rosary around her bed. And right in the middle, my mom drew her last breath. And everybody kind of paused. And then we just finished the rosary. We just kept praying. And it was so beautiful. Like, I don't know how to explain that. Like, if you haven't been around someone that you love that moves on, and it's clean, there's no baggage, It's so beautiful. And I'll remember, I can see it in my head as I'm telling it to you. I can see it. Just the blanket just stopped going up. And it was so peaceful and so beautiful. I've heard some people say that they saw lights in the rooms and stuff like that. Like nobody that I was there that day with said anything like that. Other people have had different experiences. But there was a great peace in that room. And I knew that God was with us in that moment. It was wonderful. My father was a different case. My father was, as many of you know, is absolutely my hero. My dad was just filled with integrity, filled with it. And he had me. How ironic. And he was a Korean War veteran, Chicago police lieutenant. My dad was one of these guys, when he'd walk into a room, like everybody would look at him. And he'd start telling a story, and the whole place would shut up and look at my dad. You know, he was just everything that I ever wanted to be. When I was 6 years old, an artery broke in his bowel when he was in the office. And it began to hemorrhage, and they couldn't stop the hemorrhaging in 1972. They can fix it today pretty quickly. And he passed away, and there were 350 cars in the funeral procession. And the mayor was there, and it was crazy to see this funeral. And I was a squirt, man. I was 6 years old. And I went on to live the life that I lived, that I've shared with you guys over the last several weeks about what an idiot I was, and how lost I was, and how confused about life I was. And then I had my dad. And I don't know how you do that either. So I went to Joe, and I said, I don't know how to make amends to my dad. And he said, you write your dad a letter, and you go to his grave and you read it. And I wrote like a 2-page letter to my dad. And I said, I really don't know what to confess here. I think you kind of know it. I think you kind of watched. And for as bad as it was, I got a feeling you had a hand in not making sure it was worse, because it could have been a lot worse. Dodged a lot of bullets. And I went up to this gravestone, and it was his military gravestone. And I read the letter to my dad. And I just sat there. It probably took me 15, 20 minutes. And I was quiet. And at this point, I probably had about 8 months of sobriety. And I just remember feeling this feeling I had when I left the gravesite. Not that it was fixed. I didn't have any vision or anything like that. It was nothing that way. But it was absolutely surreal. That I could feel like in some way my dad loved me. That's all I really wanted to hear ever. That's all I really wanted to know. That he loved me. And I remember walking away feeling like he does. He does. Now, the kicker on that is, let's say I stayed sober and I stopped at step 5. What a shame. What a shame that I would have lost everything I got from not stopping. I went to kids I teased in school. There was one kid, and it was brutal what I did to him. I won't even get into it. But I went to an all-boys school. And when you humiliate another man in front of other men, that's a devastating deal to the man who was humiliated. I've been on the receiving end, and I was on also the giving end of that. And I finally found this guy. I couldn't find him. I didn't know where he was. And I kept looking around and talking to people. And one day, just absolutely out of the blue, I saw his brother that I'd also gone to school with. And I said, hey, man, I've been looking for your brother. I'm wondering if you could give me his phone number. I'd love to chat with him for a little bit. And he said, yeah, sure, no problem. And so he gives me the number, and I call him up. I'm living in Sioux Falls. He's in a town called Midlothian, Illinois. And I called him up. I said, hey, this is Mike Donnelly, and I've been looking for you. I wanted to chat with you. And you could have, did you ever hear a silence that's so deafening? Like you can just hear the silence on the other end of the phone. And he goes, what? Now, I'm like 35, okay? I was a senior in high school when I did this to this kid, and he was a year or so behind me, right? So this is like half his life. And the next time he hears my voice, there's that silence. And I said, hey, man, you remember that thing I did? I just wanted to give you a call and talk to you about that. I said, I was an idiot. I was a kid looking for attention all the time because I didn't have any. I didn't feel like I would ever get enough of it. That's pretty selfish. It was pretty demeaning what I did to you. And I know that today there's nothing I can do to go back and make that right. I can't erase that. But I want you to know that I would if I could. I want you to know that if there's anything that you ever need, that I'll do it to make this right. And I've heard some people say that, that's in the past. You got to let that go. I don't find one sentence in the big book that tells me that my past is to be let go of. Not one. I'm told I'm not to shut the door on it. Joe didn't shut the door on his past, and he told me stories about his life, and it motivated and inspired me to get the life that he was living by not shutting the door. He kept it wide open for me to hear, right? I had many men in Alcoholics, Keith, Dennis, many, many men who shared with me the crosses that they carried into their own mind. And by not just saying, hey, that was yesterday, and, at some point you got to let all this go. Like, who says that? Only those that don't understand the magic and the beauty and the love that comes from the 8th and 9th step. I was like, oh, that's it. And God bless them. They're well-meaning, I'm sure. That's not what our book says. So I said, is there anything I can do for you to make this right? Boom. That pause again. It's that silence again. And I hear his voice crack, and he goes, I think you just did it. I think you just did it. I said, well, I hope so, and if I didn't, I want you to give me my number, and you call me. If there's anything you need, you let me know. Right, yeah, sure. So, well, I don't know what else to say, man. Just have a good day. He said, hey, thanks for calling. No more silence, right? He was engaging me a little bit. Hey, thanks for calling. I wouldn't have got thank you for anything when I first dialed him. I had a little problem with money before I came into Alcoholics Anonymous. Maybe some of you can relate to that. Probably not. It's a very rare occurrence with us, right? Yeah. I had failed to file federal income tax for the 4 years prior to joining Alcoholics Anonymous. Whoops. And I found this guy in AA, and he was an accountant. And he got all the Illinois state stuff done for me and the federal government stuff done for me. And for 3.5 years, I mailed off checks to the IRS until I got free of that. And there's only 2 checks that I wanted to send. It was only 2 checks I was happy about. That first one, because I'm doing it now, right? Second one was terrible. Like, I'm still doing this? Come on. And the last one. I'll never forget, I was in room 1 at Southside, and it was the last check in my pocket, and there was some old timers in there that had really helped me. John Henry was one of them, and I said, this is the last one, man. It's the last one. And it was like they had a party. They were like so happy. No, they were like authentically happy for me. Like they loved me. They were happy for me. I had $40,000 in credit card debt, and there's no big screen TV on that. It was beer and pizza and late fees and high interest charges, right? Because I paid all my bills on the color coding system, right? The white one is just a notification that in 30 days you'll get a yellow one, right? And the yellow one is a precursor to the red one, which says once you get the red one, then you have to call because you need 30 days to pay the bill. So I know the creditors thought it was a little different message, but that's what I interpreted it as. And started to get my act together on that stuff, right? And done really well with money on that, in that sense of no debt and living without debt. About 3 years ago, I met a buddy, and he said, you should think about starting your own business. And I thought, I should. And yeah, very humble of me, wasn't it? Yeah. Because I don't know about you, but when someone, it wasn't like, I'm going to go do some discerning on this. It was, yes, I should. Right? It's a very different deal. And I was sincere, and I think I was honorable in that deal. I don't think the other people were, though. That's just my honest opinion as I stand here today. Truthfully, I didn't even know I was going to talk about this. But a short time into the deal, there was an infraction in the contract. And there wasn't anything that I could do about it. And that ship sailed. And man, there were periods where I was so depressed and so sad. And my wife just walking alongside of me like a trooper, you know. Up and down, not sure what was going to work out, whether it's not going to work out, what's going to happen, what ain't going to work out. We've known that now for about 1.5 years. And our book says we don't dodge our creditors. So I'm trying to do the best I can to work out the best deal I can so that the most people get the most money that I can give to them without it destroying me. That's 27 years sober. But I can stand before you and tell you that story because I am not dodging my creditors. I am not running. I've been honest with everybody, and I've been honest with everybody from the very beginning of that plight that almost broke me. But in hindsight, I got to tell you, I needed it to break me. It did. More. See, I really believe we're taught in this thing, hey, I'm not supposed to want more. I'm not supposed to want more. I'm not supposed to want more. I got enough. I got enough. I got enough. Maybe that's true on certain things. But I want more of God in my life. And I want more humility in my life. And I want more sacrificial love in my life. Because I'm not done yet. I'm not there yet. And if I don't engage life at some level, I'm never going to learn those lessons, and I'm never going to be involved in the process of change. I'm never going to get my heart of stone changed to heart of flesh like I'm promised. I can't hide in the house. I can't run away. I got to be involved in it, and I got to stand up and own what I did wrong, and I got to stand up and make the best of the situation when someone else does wrong. And I can do that. And I was greatly ashamed because I thought I was the one that failed. And indeed I did. Indeed I did. And I'm not saying I'm proud of the failure, because I'm not. But I have a much more balanced look of it today because I talked to people about it, because I didn't run from it, because I didn't hide, because I didn't make up some excuse and, run for cover. Like I'm right in the middle of the intersection of this deal, right? But as best I can, I feel like I'm standing up like a man, and I'm owning it, and I'm talking to people, and I don't dodge phone calls, and I answer everybody's questions. And although I'll not be able to write them a check for everything that's there, they'll know one thing, that the message that this book and all of you have taught me is that Mike Downey will always answer his phone. It may not be the amend I want to make, but it's the amend I can make. And I'm going to make it. I'm gonna. Because I need more God in my life. And although it looks like it's a business deal, it's not. I mean, it is, but it's not. It's really this, like it's always been every time I've been in a challenge or a trial. It's always this. It's always God knocking on my heart. Let me in more. Let me in more. Let me in more. It just sounds like a trial. It's not. It's my daddy at the door knocking. Sounds like a trial, but it's my daddy at the door knocking. I didn't know that the ninth step brought this kind of stuff to me. I mean, I could read those promises and be like, yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, that'd be great. But to have them is different than to know about them. And the only way we get them is if we do 8 and 9. Not talk about them, not know about them. Do it. That's when the book promises me that stuff. If I'm painstaking about this phase of my development, that means I got pain and I gotta stake my pain on it. Because the 12 and 12 talks about this, right? In 6 and 7. It says you're always going to be in pain. Thanks, Bill, right? But there's 2 kinds of pain. There's the pain of trying, There's the inevitable pain of failing to do so. That's it, right? That's it. I hurt a lot of women when I was out there boozing. Less than most, more than some, but I did. And in many ways, I fed my ego off of that. And I tried to build up my own self-esteem from it. And when I would feel down, and I could connect with another person in that way, it would make me feel better about me. Sometimes it was consensual. Sometimes they said that was okay. And so I told myself it was. So I'm talking to Keith. I'm talking to my sponsor. I'm doing the deal, right? I'm checking these names off the list. And Keith comes up with this deal, and I think it's absolutely true today. And he said, name one other activity where consensual selfishness lets you off the hook. Wait. Say that again. He said, did you notice it doesn't say, it says your side of the street, Mike. Yours. Were you selfish? Not was it acceptable to the other person. Were you selfish when you acted that way with whatever situation you were in? And I had to say, yeah. I had to say, yeah. And some of these were very, long committed relationships, right? And I had dated one gal for about 5 years and damn near destroyed her life. And then elevated to a 3-year destructionary relationship, right? A lot of consensual things took place. I gotta tell you, every one was selfish. I was still looking to feed my own ego. I was still looking for me to be elevated by those actions. And I had to go to them. And I had to say, look, you are not a pawn on my chessboard. You're a human being. And you have feelings and desires, and you have rights, and you have dignity. And I didn't show you that all the time. Matter of fact, a lot of the time I didn't. And that wasn't right. Wasn't right. I suspect in a room this big with this many women, there are ladies in here who have been hurt by selfish men. I don't doubt that for a second. Just the sheer volume. I don't know who it is. None of my business, but I'm guessing. And it's likely that no one's ever going to tell you this, so I'm going to do it on behalf of selfish men everywhere. I'm really sorry you got hurt. You didn't deserve it. You're worth more than that. You're a child of God. You're not a body. You're a person. Very different thing. Very different thing. And I don't know what else to say except I'm sorry. But you deserve better. So I had to go make those amends, right? I had friends, just things, stuff I stole. I don't know, just all kinds of stuff, right? And it just went right down the list. I want to close with 2 stories if it's okay. I know it's 8:30, but can I ask for just a couple minutes? Is that okay? Is it okay? All right. Your time is as valuable as mine. I want to be respectful of that. 2 stories. One is I had this priest. I was in college the night the Bears won the Super Bowl. And yes, right. Right up there with the 4th of July in American history. And the Bears. And I got really, really drunk. And this, it was, 2, 3 in the morning, and this priest was very gracious to me. I had a case of the guilts. I don't know if any of you guys ever had that when you were boozing, but I'd get it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta do something. So I go knocking on this rectory door at whatever time in the morning it is, and this very kind priest comes to the door and he says, "What's up?" And I said, "Hey, I got to go to confession." And he's like, "Well, we do that on Thursdays." I'm like, "No, Father, right now." And he's like, "You sure?" And I'm like, "Yeah, please, I got to go right now." She's like, "All right, I'll meet you in the church." So he runs over there, and I'm with a gal that I'm dating. And squirrel, right? I would stay here, stay here, stay here. And so he comes down to the church. He's like, you want to go in the confessional? I said, no, we can just sit right here and do it if you're good with that. And he's like, what about the girlfriend, right? I'm like, no, it's okay. We're really close. 2 weeks we dated. We were very close. And we didn't date much longer after she heard me confess my sins to this priest. And, but this guy like gave his time to me, like he gave his heart to me. He saw that I was sort of broken in that moment, and he was kind and gracious to me. The following Sunday, some of my friends run off to church. I had a lot going on. I had to go see a guy about a thing, couldn't make church, believe it or not. And they came back and they were talking about how wonderful this homily was that this priest laid out, and how this one student during that week had really impacted him in a way. And I don't know, as soon as I heard one student, I didn't hear the rest of what they said, right? Because in a school of 7,500 kids, I knew he was talking about me. And he was campus minister for 7,500 kids. All he did from 8 in the morning to 5 in the afternoon was listen to kids come in and whine about their life, right? But I knew it was me. So every time I saw that guy, and guys in this room will probably understand it. Ladies, you can pretend like you don't understand it, but I know you do. I'm married to a talker. She tells me all of your secrets. So, so we play the big horn game, right? Who's got the biggest horns, right? So I'd see this priest in the hallway, and you'll understand when I explain this. So I'd see him in the hallway and have my book, right? And he'd say, hi, Mike, how are you? And I wouldn't answer him. I'd glare at him, and I'd walk right at him. Like aggressively walk right in his path so he'd have to get out of my way, right? Bump into him. Excuse me, right? Big horn boy. That was me, right? Got the big horns. Idiot. And I drank my way out of school that year. And I actually won an award where I had to go back the following year and give it to the next student recipient. University was very happy that I had won that thing. And so I had to go back and give it back. And they're all like, oh, the drunk is back to give the award away. Good. And I got plowed at that thing. And I saw this priest come over. And he said, I understand you're not in school anymore, Mike. How are things going? Good, Father, good. Good. I'm bombed. Got all my friends there. We're at the end of this bar. And they were selling baby buds. They were like little 8-ounce Budweiser bottles, 3 for $5, right? And I said, you know, Father, you're not out there dancing. And he gives me one of them. And I said, you know what? It's probably been a long time since you've been with a woman, Father. Hold on, I'll help you out. And I whistled a gal who was walking by over, and she had brown hair, black hair, brown hair. And I said, why don't you take Father out on the dance floor? You know, it's been a long time since he's been with a woman. He's probably forgot how to dance. Why don't you help him out a little bit? And he goes, Mike, what are you doing? And I go, brunettes. You must not like brunettes. Hold on a second, I'll help you. There's a redhead walking by. Whistled her over. And I go, Father doesn't like brunettes. He likes redheads. It's been a long time since he's been with a woman. Why don't you take him out on the dance floor? Show him a good time. And he goes, Mike, stop it. And I turned around and I reached an armful of empty beer bottles. And I poked this priest in the chest. Because I knew he talked about me, although I hadn't a clue that he did or not, but I knew it. And I said, Father, I poked him in the chest. Father, when I tell you to dance, I mean dance. And I grabbed these empty beer bottles and I began to throw them at the priest's feet so he'd have to jump in the air and move his feet around. Humiliated him in front of his students, in front of the administration of the school, everybody. Right? And he walked away from me. I mean, his head fell. He walked away from me. Later in the evening, I was taken out in handcuffs from a police officer, but that's another story. And now he's on my 8th step, and I don't know how to make this amend. Like, how do you make that amend? So I go to the university. He had transferred to another school called St. Xavier. I went over there. It was a long time. He was gone. They weren't sure where he was at. Prayed, talked to friends, talked to other students, talked to someone that might be able to find him. Couldn't find him anywhere. And so one day I'm praying about it, and I just think this just comes to me. I just think this. You know, why don't you try 411 in New Lenox, Illinois? I don't know why that hit me. So I picked up my phone. We were married at the time, and I picked up the phone and called 911 or 411, and 911 was for my wife, but she had come to the realization who she married and needed help immediately. And so dialed 411, and they put me through. Sure enough, Father Phil picked up the phone. And I said, Father Phil, this is Michael Donnelly. I don't know if you remember me. He goes, I remember you. And I said, hey, you're a man of God, and I humiliated you. In front of all of your peers, in front of other administrators, I did that, and I don't know how to make that right. And he said, tell me why you're calling. Like, tell me what's going on here. I said, well, I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I got to make right the things that I've done wrong in my past. And he said, well, I don't know what you can do. I appreciate the call, and you're forgiven. And I said, no, I want to do something. He said, all right. He said, you guys do a lot of talking. You tell your stories all the time, you guys in there, right? I said, yeah. He said, if you ever think this story will help someone else make restitution for wrongs they did, I want you to tell the story. And then when you go home that night, would you get on your hands and knees and pray for my family? And I said, yeah. And every time I tell that story in order to make amends to Father Phil, like I'm going to do tonight, I'm going to get on my hands and knees next to my bed, and I'm going to ask God to bless his family. Imagine. If I would have stopped at 5, all the people I wouldn't have met, all the things I wouldn't have had, all the experiences I would have missed, because as Bill Wilson says, the good is the enemy of the best. I want every single thing the program of Alcoholics Anonymous can give me. And it can only give me one thing, because we only work on one thing. And that is day in and day out, my soul gets healed a little bit more by the grace of God. Can't fix my body. It can't fix my mind. It can only fix my soul. So I'm in the sales contest. I promise I'll make this quick. I'm in the sales contest, and I'm going to win the sales contest. Why? Because I'm in a sales contest. So what's the purpose of sales contest? Making everyone else lose. That's the point of a sales contest. It's just like sports, right? That was my thought then. So I got to win this thing. So I go to this customer, this potential customer, and I sign him up, and I lie to him about what's in the contract. And I oversell him by about $750, which back 20, 30 years ago was a lot of money. And now he's on my A step, and I got to make it right. And so I go to my sponsor and I said, how do I make this right? He said, well, the first thing you do is you go to your boss because you lied. You falsified contracts. Your company has to know what you did. You hurt them too, even though they're not on your A step. Thanks for the clarity. And so I called up my boss, and I told her what happened, and we went roundy round. And at the end of the day, she said, can't you just tell him this year's contract is different than last year, and you're actually saving him money by not adding it in? And I said, no, can't do that. But I meant like I was sincere about it, and it kind of stunned me that I was sincere about it, you know? And he said, well, if he calls in and raises any deal or makes any legal claims or whatever, you and I never had this conversation. Whatever. So I go to this guy, his name is Joe, and we sit down, and I'm a wreck because I know what's going to happen, right? I know what's going to happen. He's going to call my boss, his lawyer. It's going to be a mess. And he's pretty tied into the Sioux Falls business community, and so forget me getting a job anywhere, right? So he says, you sound a little distraught on the phone, Mike. What's going on? I said, well, I come by, Joe, because I owe you $750. I falsified the contract last year, and I stole $750 from you, and I don't have it. I got $250, and in 6 weeks I get another commission check, and I'll bring you the balance then, but I don't have it today. And he's like, why are you here? And I was like, well, I falsified a contract, Joe. I stole $750. He said, no, I know what you did, but why are you here? And I said, well, I'm trying to change my life. I'm trying to be a different person. And I got to own the things I did wrong. And I got to make restitution for them. Sorries don't help. I got to make it right. And he says, He said, do you mind if I tell you a story? And I started crying. right? As my wife will tell you, I was not a crier. Like, a lot has changed over the years, but I was not a crier then, right? And I was like, sure, yeah. So he tells me this story, and he says, look, when I was a kid, we used to go out and pick peas all the time. And we have these baskets, and we'd it would almost be unconscious. Like, after a while, like, you wouldn't even know you were doing it. You just start picking and moving down this row, and there were only 2 rules. One is you had to honor the bells, and there were 2 bells that rang, one with 15 minutes left to pick, and the other was the pickup truck is going back to the farmhouse. Like, you better be on. It's a long walk, right? And the other rule was whatever row you were in, you had to pick and stay in that row. That way the farmer could keep track of what was picked and not picked. So he's doing this deal, and he's doing this deal, and he's doing this deal. He says, one day I look out, Mike, and along the horizon there are some railroad tracks. There's a little bit of a gully, and I see this hobo jump off the train before it came into town. And he rolled in. I remember just thinking he had this huge, like a 10-gallon cowboy hat on, like a big cowboy hat, you know. And he said, suddenly, as I'm doing this deal, I look down the row, and he's in my row with his cowboy hat, putting my peas in his cowboy hat. He says, and I lose track of this sort of unconscious picking I'm doing. And I'm focusing on this guy, and I'm focusing on this guy, and I'm wondering, this guy's taking my peas. He said, I heard a bell ring. And that meant I only had 15 minutes left to pick, and I had to be in the pickup truck. And I looked down, and I wasn't going to make my nut. No way I was going to fill this thing up to the line to get my quarter for that basket. And I was just ticked. So I'm picking as fast as I can, as much as I can, and finally I stop, and I start walking to the thing, and all of a sudden Joe says he hears, hey, kid! And Joe turns around, and it's this hobo. And he's holding this monster hat full of peas. And he goes over to Joe's basket, and he dumps the peas in the basket. He said, he poked me in the chest. He said, remember that, kid? You got a hat full of peas today, and you didn't ask for one, right? And someday somebody's going to come knocking on your door, and they're going to need a hat full of peas, and you better give them one because somebody gave you one once. You know what I mean, Mike? And I was like, no, peas? I had no idea what he was talking about. He said, I'm giving you a hat full of peas, Mike. You don't owe me anything. I said, no. He says, shh. He says, look, the honesty in your eye right now is worth every dime you owe me. You can drop checks off here all you want. I'm never cashing them. Doesn't matter. Robert actually met this guy when we had dinner at Rosie's. You remember that? And he says, I'll tell you another thing. He says, look, if you're ever looking for a job, we could use an honest guy like you around here. How about that? I'm the thief. I'm the thief that came to make restitution for my stealing, and he called me honest. And he offered me a job because he needed honesty in his office. I'm the thief. Weird. He said, you may not want to be in my business, and that's fine. He said, if you ever need a letter of recommendation, give me a call, have my secretary write it up, I'll sign it. You can just pick it up at the front desk. Stunned. And I'm a big guy, and he was a bigger guy than me, if you can believe that. And he comes up from around his desk, and he does this. And I stood up, and this guy gives me a hug in his office. And I'm slobbering. I mean, I'm just bawling. And he pulls my shoulders back, and he looks me in the eye, and he goes, one more thing. And I said, what's that? And he goes, God's bigger than you, Mike, and he's bigger than me, and he sure the hell is bigger than $750. And he pokes me in the chest, and he said, remember that, kid. You got a hat full of peas today, and you didn't even ask for one. And someday, Mike, somebody's going to come knocking on your door, and they're going to need a hat full of peas, and you better give them one because somebody gave you one once, and you didn't even ask for it. To me, that hat is Alcoholics Anonymous. You see, I've gotten so much more, exponentially more, from doing what I needed to do just to not die. Just to not die in alcoholism. And I got so much more. And it begins and it ends with step 3. Step 4 through step 12 is how I complete my decision to give my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand it. It's not a prayer. It's a prayer and a commitment to work the balance of the steps. And when I'm involved in that, my potential is me plus God. And when I'm not, it's just me. If you want record of what just me looks like, that's called my fourth step. I don't want to live that. I don't want to be fourth step Mike anymore. I want to be this transformed, this changed of heart guy, this converted guy who longs for God to fix more and more and more and more and more of his soul as time goes by, and he's done that. Happy birthday to everybody who had a birthday. Thank you very much for your patience. Plenty of cake left. God bless you all. Have a good night.
All right, let's go ahead and close with the Lord's Prayer. Our Father,
hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Keep coming back. It works. You work it.
stop it.
Now it's okay.